Viewers of Bermedu Media, welcome. This is your host, Ambisa Belina. Today I have four distinguished individuals who would be participating in a roundtable on a topic of Ethiopia Unravelling and what is next. Ethiopia's journey to a predictable failure began the moment Menelik started and Haile Selassie completed the project of building an Ethiopian empire in the 1800s and early 1900s. The project involved expansion of the then Abyssinian empire to 3 times its original size through forceful incorporation of free southern nations. And the occupiers renamed the entity Ethiopia in the late 1930s. Instead of recognizing and nurturing the forcefully created diversity, the new rulers resorted to a policy of extermination, forcing the incorporated nations to accept the new rulers' culture, Amhara culture, language, Amharic, and religion, Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, while criminalizing the use and development of the nation's own culture, religion, and language. They replaced indigenous leaders or rulers with imported individuals from the occupiers group, or co-opted local leaders answerable to the emperors and not to their own people. They instituted new land tenure policy that transferred ownership of the occupied citizens' property to the settlers and the Orthodox Church they planted throughout the occupied lands. Church officials and preachers are directly imported from the home nation of the occupiers. Above all, the farmers' occupied area were compelled to hand over their produce to the new absentee landlord individuals and church, while they were reduced to poverty-stricken second-class citizens. These are the precursors that first triggered the spontaneous resistance and armed struggle throughout the empire that resulted in the departure of Eritrea in 1992, and that exacerbated the current progress that has reached near disintegration. The purpose of this roundtable is to explore opportunities, ways to intervene, and to avoid impending disintegration, especially to avoid a chaotic disintegration and unnecessarily bloodshed. As I said earlier, I have four distinguished individuals, and I'm going to introduce each one of them by turn. My first guest is Professor Asfaw Beyene. Dr. Asfaw Beyene is a professor of mechanical engineering at San Diego State University. His research areas are thermodynamics and energy conversion. He has secured over $10 million in grants and published over 140 reviewed articles in various journals, proceedings, and books, including chapters in the Handbook of Mechanical Engineering and Mark's Handbook. Dr. Beyene has received recognition from his scholarship, including Distinguished Faculty Award. He is fellow member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineering. It would be my distinct honor to welcome Professor Asfaw Beyene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. My second uh, guest is Dr. Bahiru Duguma. Dr. Bahiru Duguma is an international development and diplomacy expert with 30 plus years of successful career in international agricultural development. Over the years, he has served as a researcher, research system manager, as an educator with 3 international organizations in Africa, as a senior advisor, diplomat, and U.S. Foreign Service officer with the U.S. aid in Asia and in the U.S. Dr. Duguma holds a PhD, Masters of Science, and Bachelor of Science in Forest Resource Management from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, and an MBA from the University of Maryland, University College, USA. He has authored and co-authored 2 books and 50 plus articles in peer-reviewed international journals and conference proceedings. Duguma currently serves on the board of various not-for-profit Oromo organizations. It is also my distinguished honor to welcome Dr. Bahiru Duguma. Welcome, Dr. Bahiru.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. My third guest is Professor Asafa Jalleta. Professor Asafa Jalleta is a professor of sociology and global and African studies at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. His expertise focuses on the area of global studies, development, and international inequality, social movements, nationalism, terrorism studies, indigenous studies, and race and ethnicity. He has published and edited 13 books and authored more than 80 book chapters and referred articles in regional and international journals and book chapters. It is my honor to receive welcome Professor Asafa. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Ambesa, for inviting me.
Last but not least, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Trevor Truman, who is a family doctor and has helped to train Oromo health workers in camps in the Sudan from 1988 to 1991. He has reported and campaigned on human rights in Ethiopia since 1994, writing 57 reports on abuses in Ethiopian for the Oromo Support Group, and has interviewed hundreds of Oromo refugees in Europe, North America, and Africa. It is my distinguished honor to welcome Dr. Galeto. Welcome, Dr. Galeto.
Began the way done. Thank you very much, and it is an honor to be among such distinguished company. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I introduced earlier, today's panel roundtable discussion is on the current situation in Ethiopia. The title of our discussion would be Ethiopia Unravelling, What is Next? So, probably the best way to start the discussion is to assess the current realities or current affairs that are on the ground. With that, I will invite Professor Asfo to begin.
Galatomi, Dr. Hambisa. Ethiopian political reality, if one is to express it in a single word, it will be a political compass. It is in turmoil, the intersection of a number of political entities, armed, powerful political entities, including the Tigrayan Defense Forces, OLA, of course, and the government, not yet to be ignored, and then other political forces that many may see as peripheral, but they are taking center stage, such as the Somalis, Afar, Benishangul, Command, etc. The intersection of these political forces has produced so many possibilities that we today can measure the complexity of Ethiopian politics, but by the unknown and or by the anticipation of multitude of outcomes. I will. I knew this question will come, and I listed 8 scenarios that could precipitate out of the current situation. And this tells you how unpredictable the situation can come. And yet, we can classify them as likely, very likely, or unlikely. Uh, the unlikely scenarios, 3 of them, but still that should be on the table, are that the TDF will win the central power single-handedly, which I think is unlikely because of the power balance. The Ethiopian forces will win. That also is unlikely, but yet it is a scenario that is still on the table. Amhara and the Tigran forces may take central power. Many think that this is very unlikely, but still is on the table. And then the 50-50 that may be possible or may not be possible. 2 of them that negotiated Abiy and Tigran Defense Forces, international community is pushing this. So this is also on the table, although a little less likely because of the accumulated hate. And then fifth, which is also 50-50, will be the stalemate. The stalemate could eventually produce a scenario of warlordism, which will defeat the nationalist sentiment. So these are 50-50. But in my opinion, the 3 likely scenarios of different quality are that Ola and TDF will make a genuine coalition to topple Abiy. This could be defeated by TPLF's intrigues and also by our own gullibility. So that is likely, Ola and TDF. And then all major political forces may come to a round table and make peace. This is also likely, especially if the Almighty reigns some common sense in that country, something that the Almighty has not done for a while. And the last one, which in my opinion is going to be the most likely, is that the TPLF will dominate the center with some marionette regimes. In other words, a return in a modern fashion, of course, of the 1991. So these multitude scenarios, their presence complicates the situation where we are in. And if I get a chance, I will come later on to kind of sift through these possibilities and emerging scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I would give a chance to Dr. Bahru to present his assessment of the current situation.
Thank you, Dr. Ramisa. Let me kind of try to highlight why the state of affairs right now in Ethiopia is pretty much close to state failure. Why did we say that? I perfectly understand the various scenarios that Professor Asfa mentioned, and that definitely, I think, large swath of observers do agree. But why do we believe that things are falling apart? And just a quick reminder, and that a year ago, we all heard what the government at the time called a quick law and order operation in Tigray region, northern Ethiopia. It certainly did not happen as anticipated in a week or in 5 days or whatever we were told. I don't remember the date that were targeted. But down the line, they came out and said, okay, the law and order operation is over, and we have full control of what is going on in Tigray. Fast forward a year later, where are we as we celebrate the so-called end of the law and order Operation Integral? I don't have to say it because it's all over the mass media. We imported foreign forces, we meaning the Ethiopian state, imported foreign forces to come and kill the people apparently the regime sought to protect. It hasn't helped. We watched horror over the 12 or so months that has gone by. It's no longer about celebration, but it's about most frightening phase right now is we are in a situation where the regime is calling the citizens to literally take the law into their own hands and murder each other. I have never heard anywhere, read anywhere in history when something of that nature happens in the world. It's horrifying as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure you guys agree with me. It's terrifying for a regime that says he is heading, administering a country to then call upon the citizens to murder each other. That is why I'm even shocked, to say the least. The country is still together, the country is still standing. We still call Ethiopia. The bottom line, though, is that everybody knows the regime has control of the Fincine, where the entire probably national defense is protecting, literally protecting the ruling group in town, whereas the large part of the ruler Ethiopia is under the various freedom fighters. Now, I don't want to go to the details, but what is the underlying cause? What is the root cause of all this chaos? Is it, as the regime wants us to believe, something that TPLF created over the last 20 years, that they swore to destroy Ethiopia as a country, as the Prime Minister tried to suggest? I'm afraid it is not. Only people, in my opinion, who are not very familiar with Ethiopian history would suggest something of that nature. You go back and look at it from when the time we were young kids in university in Addis Ababa, and a little before that, around the early 1960s, the oppressed nations in Ethiopia who were forcibly brought together already carrying arms and conducting armed struggle. It has nothing to do with the TPLF trying to destroy Ethiopia. I'm sorry, it has nothing to do with OLF trying to destroy Ethiopia, as the current regime wants the whole world to believe. That is not true. That is dishonest. That is not going to solve Ethiopia's problem. Ethiopia's problem is the very foundation of the country is built on something that obviously from the beginning was going to explode. And it exploded, as I said, soon after Haile Selassie took over power. It exploded when 4 different armed groups decided to take arms and fight for independence of their people, freedom of their people. Today, we are stuck with a very, really horrifying scenario where those who are in power seem to be blinded by the seemingly hatred they have for their own colleagues. These are groups who ruled this country together for the last 30 years. The current regime in Addis is not anything different, not brand new. They're the same group, the same individuals. In my opinion, dreadfully terrified with the prospect of being held accountable for the crime they have committed together with the people they are accusing. Yes, we all know that TPLF did not do itself any good by way it went about cultivating more enemies than friends during the 27 years of their tenure. But does it call for what the regime is doing to destroy people, a nation? I'm afraid no. So yes, the current reality in Ethiopia is probably something that's unheard of. We are teetering on the edge of a failed state. But it's not lost. There is still opportunity, provided there is a will, and this country can be saved, in my opinion. And I hope we'll have a chance to come back to that and discuss. Let me give back to you, Dr. Ambisa.
Thank you, Dr. Duguma. Professor Asafa, so what do you see as the every situation, every challenge you face as always presenting an opportunity as well? So what do you think is, in your assessment, the current reality, and what has the international community has to do? What do you think of the alliance between the armed forces, which was signed in DC about a week ago?
I think I should start from the reality on the ground. Uh, there have been wars in the Ethiopian Empire for almost 3 years. These wars have been genocidal. Many people don't pay attention that the war that is going on in the Ethiopian Empire started when the revolution that was started by Kero Dakare was aborted and taken away by the neo Netanyahu government of Abiy. The neo Netanyahu government, as soon as it came to power, it started to engage systematic war, genocidal war in Oromia, killing Keros and Dakares, murdering people, grossly violating human rights. Then, within recently, the regime started to engage in genocidal war in Tigray. The competition between the Tigrayan Liberation Front and the new Netanyahu government is the competition on power. The new Netanyahu government wants to totally control the Ethiopian state, to reshape the Ethiopian state in the image of Amara Netanyas and Oromo Netanyas, by the way. So Netanyas are not only Amara, the Oromo Netanyas, both of them are combined to create Ethiopia in a new image. In doing that, they started war on all colonized peoples and oppressed peoples who are struggling for genuine democracy and self-determination. They started to seriously engage in the name of democracy. In doing that, the regime suppressed the genuine organization that presented the Oromo Liberation Front, and Oromo Federalist Congress. Without any competition, it declared itself to be democratically elected government in Oromia and beyond. So the thing is that this government is trying to pull back the wheel of history. The Ethiopian empire has been facing serious crisis. Ethiopia is based on ethno-racial hierarchy in which the Habashas are on the top. The two groups that are contesting now is the Amaras and the Tigrayans. And the Amaras thought that they are on top. They want to totally destroy the TPLF power. Now they are not successful. So the Oromos and the Tigrayans are, although they have been enemies, starting to create an alliance of survival, because the survival of the Oromos and the survival of the Tigrayan people are in question. This group are attacked, terrorized, almost destroyed. So this group are coming together in order to topple the Abiy government, which is genocidal and the terrorist government. So the Tigrayans created this monster, Abiy in the Opidio. This monster is coming back to hunt them, and they made this because of political opportunism and the political naivety that are that have almost destroyed them. I hope that they learn from their past mistake and make genuine alliance with Oromo Liberation Front and other groups to totally dismantle ethno-racial hierarchy in the Ethiopian empire and enable the people to have a genuine democracy, so that they can determine their destiny as oppressed people. So the international community is coming into this situation. It is trying to stop this genocidal war without addressing the fundamental problems that fundamental problems that cause the problem. You cannot solve these contradictions, these problems, without totally addressing historical and contemporary conditions that that created these open hidden wars in the Ethiopian Empire. So one has to, if anybody is interested to address this issue, one has to understand how the Ethiopian Empire was created, how it has been continuing, how it has been committing genocide, terrorism, establishing settler colonialism in the Neptunian system. So it's very important that people understand the Neptunian nature of the Ethiopian state. When I say the Neptunian nature, I'm not talking about only Amhara Neptunians. There are Oromo Neptunians, there are Tigrian Neptunians, and all Neptunians who are supporting this system, the new Neptunian government that want to perpetuate Ethiopian racism, war, gross human rights violations. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Truman, what's your take on the current assessment of affairs in Ethiopia, and you know, what should be done by anyone who is interested in solving this issue?
Thank you very much, Hamisa. I agree very much with the previous speakers, and Asifa reminded me of comparing the Tigrayan and Amhara elites to schoolboy bullies, being the two bullies in the classroom who are fighting each other for the right to steal all the other pupils' pocket money in the class. So, but it does seem now that the TPLF has less desire to take over Ethiopia and even to run Jinfine, Addis Ababa. This is according to Alex Duval. We have a dire situation now, although it is full of hope for the Oromo in one sense. It is pretty dire with a collapsed economy, and the output has collapsed from Ethiopia. Agriculture has collapsed. The infrastructure has been corrupted by the OPDO. We have a society traumatized by 30 years of killing, torture, and rape. And everybody in Ethiopia knows someone or is related to someone who has been killed or tortured or detained. At the moment, we have probably between 100 and 200,000 people in detention, and not for the first time in the last 30 years. So we have a brutalized society. And on top of this, we now have quite intense hate speech and polarization, ethnic polarization, as the Amharas have gone on a campaign of territorial aggrandizement and accused all the people who they are killing, accused them of committing genocidal acts against the Amhara militia, basically, in East Wallaga, in East Shoa, in Metakal, in Tigray, and in the Oromia Special Zone. So hate speech, polarization, and this is a really visceral hatred, as it's part of Amhara culture to have a visceral dislike of Oromo. And I think that's the biggest basic problem in Ethiopia today that will take a lot of effort to overcome, and that will underpin all the problems that we have. Alex Duval wrote just a few days ago, the World Peace Institute, Tufts University op-ed, claiming that the Oromo now have Ethiopia at their feet. And he said that they just have to revive the spirit of the Oromo protest movement and restore its democratizing agenda, that is Kero, demonstrate a capacity to govern, and this means rooting out OPDO corruption, and possibly the hardest is to assuage fears of minorities, especially in minorities in other regions, like the Amhara in Oromia region, and to my mind, assuaging fear among Amhara that Oromo are bloodthirsty pagans who wish to dominate the whole of Ethiopia. We must educate the rest of Ethiopia about what the Oromo are about. Well, we must educate the Amhara, basically. That's enough of today. I think one of the most contentious issues, as noted by Alex Levar, will be what happens to Finfine and its boundaries, its identity, constitutional status, as he says, and its governance. That will be a sticking point. But I think things are looking better for Oromo now than they've looked for the last 150 years. Thank you.
Thank you all. So before we close this segment and jump to the next topic, I would give each one of you 1 minute rebuttal if you have something to state on what your peers have said. So, Professor Asfo.
I happen to agree with all the speakers. It is fortunate or unfortunate. So I don't really have a rebuttal. If I may add a caution, not a rebuttal, may not be even a caution, it will be the fact that the trust for the current coalition between Oromo and Tigrayan forces must be balanced with risk. We shouldn't go for complete trust. The media can say whatever it wants to say. Facts on the ground should be checked. And if I choose caution on this matter, after 30 years of Tigrayan domination, one should understood me. I'm not going extreme. I'm not also claiming that this such coalition is unnecessary. But to a certain degree, the coalition should not be pushed by Amhara hatred um, for Oromos. That shouldn't be the reason why we make coalition with the TPLF. The main reason has been and should be the anti-Menelik movement, which should also embrace other southern nations and nationalities. But in the end, whether TPLF wants to dominate and replay the 1991 game or not, I have a reason to believe that the Oromo movement has passed that stage and we can defend our interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bahero?
Quite frankly, I think we have covered fairly this round. If there is anything that I would like to add, first, I fully agree with Asfal. No one in this theater that is unfolding in Ethiopia today should act based on hatred. We all know what we as people experience, particularly Oromos experienced it under TPLF rule. That's why I always say they haven't done themselves too much good. It's like they went out of their way to earn enemies than friends. But that was then. Any relationship, any action that different constituencies are taking today in Ethiopia should not be driven by hate. That I am fully convinced, and that is why I want to underline. Number two, when we discuss about alliances, I think I would leave that decision making to those who are in that theater out there in the field dealing with it. What I would kind of desire to have happen is not just the two critical players today, that is the TPLF and OLF, but every peace-loving group, nation in that empire. It is in the best interest of our collective destiny to figure out how we can agree on how we want to move forward. And that means that negotiation, that common understanding should involve not just the two powerful guys who are carrying gas, but everybody whose interest is at stake in that empire, what has been and quite frankly still is an empire. So there has to be a win-win situation. I'm not using this because it's a buzzword. It is just because I strongly believe it's in the self-interest of every actor in this field, and that has to be taken that way. Thank you, Dr. Ambisa.
Thank you. Professor Asafa?
Thank you, Dr. Ambisa. Broadly speaking, there are two major forces contesting each other. One is the force of reaction or reactionary forces that want to maintain the Ethiopian empire, that want to refashion and improve uh, the Netanyahu system so that Ethiopia will continue the way it was. The other forces are forces of progress that want to dismantle this decadent empire, want to bring fundamental social changes for all people who are affected. So the Tigrayans are now joining these forces. I hope that they are going to continue this group, and this group should make it clear to the whole population what they are going to achieve, what they are going to do for the people. They shouldn't keep quiet. They should tell why they are better than the new Netanyahu system, how they are going to introduce democracy, social justice, human rights for all people. They should come out and make it very clear. The era of political intrigue should stop. The era of manipulating one another should stop. Everybody, every group should be genuine and work together to for once and for all to destroy the empires that have been killing, terrorizing, destroying people.
Thank you. Dr. Galato?
I really nothing to add except to echo Alex Duval's words in the article he wrote 4 days ago. The Ethiopian Empire is dead.
Thank you. We move to the next segment. The next topic we have is it appears that we are on a verge of a historical event where we are going to have a transitional government in Ethiopia. And as has been said in the previous segment, there are forces who are armed and strong in that arena, but there are nations and nationalities in Ethiopia uh, who are not armed. So there is this arm imbalance, if you may. And what should the transitional government look like? What should be included? What should be excluded? How should we balance this power imbalance that exists? How should we make it sort of try to balance it? Please, uh, for the sake of finishing all the segments, cap your comments to maybe probably 2 minutes each. Professor Asfo, shall we begin with you?
Yes, the creation of a transitional government for Ethiopia has not been the top on my mind. I have to be honest and have to admit. But nonetheless, I listed three possibilities that are likely as a transitional outcome earlier. One is a genuine, and underline that word, genuine Ola TDF unity will topple Abiy, and then that will create a more acceptable transitional government, not only led by the two, but in other words, embrace other opposition forces. The second likely scenario is also, regardless of Ola and TDF and some other forces, uh, all opposition forces will come together and make peace, especially if the international pressure continues. And the third one, which I think is still, in spite of all our good wishes, wishes are wishes, but realities are a little different. The most likely scenario is that the TPLF will still try to dominate and create some favorable satellite or marionette regimes. I know Alex Dawal mentioned that this scenario is unlikely. Many people think that this is unlikely. Um, I also hope it is unlikely. The main barrier to that, hopefully, is how we proceed with the internal unity and internal preparation of the Oromo camp. That can, in my opinion, the only force that can block re-emergence of TPLF as per 1991. And in my opinion, again, the most likely scenario is not necessarily the most desired scenario. As of now, there are things that should be done, and if those things are done, at least for the Oromo, the most likely scenario can be at the same time the most desired scenario. The most likely scenario, unless things reshuffle a little bit, will be, and of course, I'd love to be wrong, but TPLF will continue to attempt. Will they succeed or not to dominate the political panorama? Will they succeed or not? We will see. So these are the three that are playing right now. I think we should create a firm and bold internal network in order to stop the situation. In other words, in one word, yes, I would love to trust, but I want to manage the risk at the same time. I have no reason to trust if I am at risk. Let the situation play, but with the least risk to our people, so that we don't again go back by years to where we possibly could be if we were ready for what the future has to bring. Thank you.
Dr. Doguma?
Thank you. This is a kind of challenging question, quite frankly, for many reasons. Like Asfa indicated, I haven't spent too much time ruminating on this. But even though I'm not a student of history, I always look into history to glean lessons and then kind of try to gauge what may or may not happen as we move forward. We look at what happened when the military took over power in Ethiopia. We look at what happened when TPLF and EPLF came in, and then Eritrea became independent, and TPLF took over power in Ethiopia and basically dictated every single pace as they deemed it appropriate, and to serve the best interest of themselves and the constituency they claim to represent. I sincerely hope two things would happen this time. They wouldn't attempt to replicate that. And quite honestly, I don't believe if they want to replicate that, it's going to work, because the Oromos, particularly, I'm referring to our people, of the 1991 are not the same Oromos of the 2021. These are completely different state of mind, different level of consciousness, different level of preparedness to sacrifice for justice and freedom. As recent as the erasure, the one that passed 2 months ago or a month ago, you have seen what the young Oromos are doing in the face of the brutal murder that has been taking place and is taking place all over Oromia by the regime in power to terrorize our people to make sure that they don't resist. So that gives me more than the guns that Ola has and the gains they have accomplished. I still believe the people of Oromia will never allow anybody to enslave them any longer. I can say that just based on what we have seen today. Second, as quite a few of you have already suggested, and honestly, at many forums, this has also been mentioned. I don't think the TPLF is so naive that they think they can replicate. It doesn't matter how many tanks, how many guns, and how many bullets they have or they want to come with. So that should temper their expectation. I think it's sufficient for them, based on their experience, the level of hatred they have cultivated. I'm sorry to say that. The enemy that they have cultivated over 27 years when they had the opportunity to do exactly the opposite, build a truly democratic Ethiopia, should be a great lesson for them to make sure that they would not repeat that this time. So also is my hope for Ola. That lesson that we learned from TPLF should also serve us. It should serve us. This will not be a revenge journey. This should not be it's my turn journey. This should be the time when all Oromo politicians, civic society should demonstrate the incredible level of maturity that prevails now across the Oromo society, Oromo community, prove to the world that we are much better alternative for so many compelling good reasons to provide stable, just governance system for that country. So I hope the negotiation will take that into consideration. I also sincerely hope, regardless of the hopeless scenario that I see every day on web and whatever, and the rhetoric that we hear from the Amharas or the Napeñas, to say so, imperial system will never come back. The demagogue, the insistence on worshipping Menelik and carrying forward his product has failed woefully already. And it failed by losing the constituent Abyssinians, the core Abyssinians running away from you, you know? I'm referring to those people who are insisting on rebuilding imperial Ethiopia. The Eritreans left. These are the core founders of Abyssinia. The Tigrayans are itching to go. These are the core founders of Abyssinian Empire. Ethiopian Empire is a fake empire. It's something that Menelik created at the Battle of a gun. And we happen to be there because we were forced to be there up to now. And we've said enough is enough. So if we want to have a common home where each and every one of us will be able to enjoy our birthright to live freely as people, it's time we give up some of this addiction to exploiting others, to living on others. Forget about telling me this crap that to be Ethiopian means to speak Amharic or to go to Ethiopian Orthodox Church to worship. That is insanity. That's why Prime Minister Abiy really offended not just me, our people, when he started talking about we need to have one common language. Oh, dude, if that is what you think, let's get English. That's spoken by more than half of the world population. If really you cared about unity, or alternatively, then if Amharic is a national language, damn it, Oromifa should be the first national language, not Amharic. So these are just a simple logic, simple common sense. And those who are dreaming, salivating to bring about the imperial system or imperial Ethiopia should understand that that is a dream. This will never happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Doguma. Professor Asaf, would you please speak also to the power imbalance and of the different nations and nationalities as you respond to this question? Thank you.
Question. My question is transition to what? This is a very serious question. Transitions happen in our lifetime 3 times. 3 times it has been hijacked. 1974, 1991, 2018. Why? It was hijacked because of Habasha political culture. Habasha political culture is imperial politics. They don't believe in equality. They don't believe the dismantling of hierarchies. They want to impose from above. It doesn't matter whether they claim they are Marxist, whether they are democratic, whether they are nationalist. I think one has to keep in mind when we talk about transition. Another big thing, a big elephant in the house is the Oromo. The Oromos are the numerical, the largest ethno-national group. Many people would like to prevent Oromos to play their share according to their numerical strengths, according to their economic condition. So if from every corner, there are forces who would like to undermine the Oromos playing a major role in this transition. So if anybody would like to bring a genuine transition, one has to balance that. The balance, one has to deal with the Habasha political culture that believes in hierarchies, believes in state terrorism, and gross human rights violation. Whatever they do, they claim they are democratic. The Oromo should learn from the past that they shouldn't be cheated and manipulated by Habasha political culture, by Habasha elites that promise a lot and gives little or even nothing. So people in that country, if they want to transition to, if that transition is a democratic transition that will respect the interests and the rights of everybody, one has to openly discuss about these issues to come to some kind of agreement. In short of this, what I'm afraid is this transition is already started to deteriorate. Since Abiy came to power, the crisis started to be intensified, multiplied. Probably it's going to be more multiplied soon. I'm afraid that it might lead to very dangerous chaos, like in Somalia or like in Rwanda. I hope it will not happen. Because in Habasha political culture, you have to play zero-sum politics. You have to take everything or you have to lose everything. So we should be realistic. Particularly the colonized people should be realistic. In the world, if you want to bring a positive change, you must have power. You have to organizationally empower yourself and defend your interests. So the Oromos and other colonized people should understand that be ready for any eventuality that will come. It's not going to be easy, by the way. It's not going to be easy. We have to understand that reality.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Truman, what's your take?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, the immediate responsibilities will be practical, won't they? Releasing all political prisoners and looking after them, because they will need caring for. We need a functioning security force and a functioning local administration. and a functioning health service, including public health. We need to negotiate interim trade agreements and then negotiate with the aid community. In terms of policy items, one thing that's essential that must be brought in early on is checks and balances to ensure that one group never dominates again. In terms of the transitional government arrangement itself, obviously it has to be inclusive, representative, transparent, and it must be done very slowly with the ability to change as it goes along, as we learn what is necessary from the transitional process. So the initial people invited to invite the transitional administration should make any modifications under scrutiny so the whole process is public. There must be a mechanism for the effective contribution of ordinary citizens, and it must take at least 2 years. This should not be rushed. We want to do it once and get it right this time. And we must have an equal voice for all, including Amhara voices. One particular group that we must take special care of are the Amhara minorities within Oromia region. And that way we will be able to allay their fears of the Oromo to some extent. I believe the Tigrayan Defence Forces will insist that the Oromo take a major role in the transitional administration. I don't think there is any appetite now in Tigray for taking over the responsibility and the policing of the empire, or even taking over the policing of Finfinne, Addis Ababa. And this, I think, has been a sincere change on behalf of the TPLF and the other organizations which are now beginning to be heard within Tigray. The Oromo, we have to demonstrate that the Oromo are part of the solution for Ethiopia, that the Oromo must be part, an integral part of the planning, the scene setting, the agenda, the running of any dialogue that takes place. The Oromo, we must start talking among us now so that we have something to bring to the table when the big dialogue starts. We are the glue, the connective tissue of Ethiopia. There are Oromo in every region of Ethiopia, and every ethnicity, nation, nationality is represented by people, individuals in Oromia region. We've got a tradition of religious tolerance, a huge ancient tradition of democracy. And so it's obvious that the Oromo should be the people in charge of any dialogue and transitional arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Truman. Let me in a way state my take, and then I'll give each one of you a minute to talk to each other. My take is, regardless of whether a group is armed or not, I think all nations and nationalities and peoples in Ethiopia should be part and parcel of the transitional government. That means, first of all, each unit, the Oromos should own Oromia, the Tigrayans should rule in Tigray, the Walaita in Walaita, the Sidama in Sidama, and so on, the Somali in Somali, and so on. If every nation and nationalities and peoples in Ethiopia are administering their own localities, electing their own leaders, and then through their armed groups or councils of elders, they are represented um, in the transitional government, then that would take effect. So the first thing that needs to be done is to include everybody representing their own people, their own needs, cultures, language, and so on. Having said that, you all have approximately 1 minute. Less than 1 minute would be appreciated, so that we can finish our dialogue, the rest of the topics we have. Shall I begin with Professor Asfo?
Yes, the last statement you gave, the essence of that is the essence of self determination, and that is what many of the Menilikites are saying. It is divisive, they're based ethnic politics, it is bad, etc. So that's where the problem lies. Anyway, I think as a consensus, we may agree that Abiy is on the way out. Um, Alex Doyle is very smart. He said the empire is dead, uh, but the imperialists, in my opinion, will remain alive, and they are capable of creating continued turbulence. So we shall leave nothing on all sides. We shall leave nothing to chance, to hope, to wishes, and even to intuitions. Our readiness this time has to be decisively constructed to make our fate bring to our own hands. So I hope over the next days and weeks we will accomplish that. By that, I simply mean empowering the camp of the Oromo movement, the Oromo struggle, including Ola, and mobilizing more forces. Those could be in the Ethiopian defense forces, bring them to the main Oromo stream, and then we will be a power that nobody will dare to manipulate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Duguma.
I just want to comment on this based on the assumption that whatever that transitional time we are referring to or thereafter, at least as far as we are concerned, and I think that should be the same for other nations and nationalities, we will have much more say in our region than at any time in our history. In that process, one would wonder about, and it has come up a couple of times here, about the minorities in our midst. In my opinion, again, I look into what is going on around us in the world in a similar or comparable situation. If I am an American and I live in the United States, that is where my allegiance is. If I am within the United States, if I'm a Virginian, which I am, I have certain rights and limitations as a Virginian as to what I can do, particularly when it comes to politics or election outside Virginia. I see that scenario of being realistically applicable in our situation. Anybody who is in Oromia today, whether he is from Eritrea or whether he's from Gondar, but lives in Oromia as a citizen of Oromia, he or she would definitely have, in my opinion, full right and responsibility to Oromia. So it's no question asked. If somebody coming from the Brooklyn or wherever he comes from and lives in Oromia, but gives his allegiance to, say, Amhara region or Tigray region, then, like any other foreigner that lives in that region, he will have his own right and his own limitations. This is not new for Oromos, in my opinion. It is, to some extent, I would say, in a democratic countries, it's a universal. That is how, hopefully, whoever will be in a role of governing in Oromia would seriously consider and apply. We want to build a just system. We don't want to do what others have done to us back to them. That is the way I see the world unfold, hopefully.
Thank you. Professor Asafa?
I would like to go beyond what Dr. Ambisa suggests. I would like to implement universally known principles, the right of self-determination. Every nation should have a referendum to decide their fate, whether they follow what Dr. Ambisa said or whether they want to create their own state. That should be part of the politics. It should be limited. People should have the right to self-determination. There should be any group, any people, any group of people that want to have a referendum, they should have a referendum to decide that.
Thank you. Dr. Truman, if you may, I think the transition, one of the reasons why we need a transition is so that uh, there is some sort of cooling off to do what Professor Asafa just mentioned about self-determination. If you may like to respond to that.
Yeah, I think the issue of self-determination will take more than a couple of minutes right now. I think it should be part of the next section of this discussion, as far as I understand, and certainly all nations and nationalities must be part of any transitional arrangement. Exactly how you divide up the seating capacity of, let's say, one hall. How many seats go to Kimant? How many seats go to Agao? How many seats go to Gambella or whatever? It's going to be very difficult, and I don't think we can really set a rigid blueprint at the moment. This has got to be established slowly and surely by listening to voices as we go along. It's a mark of a dictatorship that you have a blueprint that you stick to rigidly. That's how the nasty guys do it. We want to be listening to people as we go along. Um, Consensus is worth working towards and worth waiting for, and that will take time. I agree absolutely with Dr. Baharu. Votes should be to do with citizenship, not ethnicity. If you live in Diridawa, you vote in Diridawa, whatever your ethnicity. Um, and as I say, there'll be plenty to talk about self-determination in a moment, but that's me for now.
All right. Thank you so much. So we proceed to our next topic. The next topic is the rights of nations to self-rule. In 1991, there were certain mistakes that were done due to the limitations and the situations at the time. Uh, for example, the case of the major Oromia cities like Finfinne and Redawa were not settled. The case of the Wallo Oromo was not settled. And because the Wallo Oromo were left as orphans, in the last 30 years they have been receiving whipping unnecessarily, brutally, um, as if they were not citizens. So at the moment of transition, the issues of these major cities in Oromia, the issues of Wallo and other places as well, and also the issue of self-determination. What needs to be done? What's your take, um, Professor Asfa?
Uh, the story of Wallo Oromo, their suffering, um, a narrow strip of land bordering the Amhara on the left and on the west, Afar on the east, Tigray on the north, as was very convenient to attack from all angles. I have spoken several times to people who come from that region. This relentless attack, starting from the imperial years, has hardened the Oromo to a degree where today they can really be examples of samples of the survival and also the fighting of the Oromo people for their self-determination and for their independence. Um, the situation in other areas such as Dire Dawa is a political decision to weaken the Oromo camp made by the TPLF, and it has continued to this day in any place where the Oromos were cut off from the mainland. And the only way, in my opinion, we can stop this is by becoming a power. I'm linking to what I mentioned earlier. You can always negotiate, but he or she who is more powerful will simply say no. And I think it has to come sooner or later, but we have to have the military, the backup, the power backup to get what we deserve, what is ours. In other words, I'm implying we have to be a little cautious not to duplicate enemies at this time. And I will leave it at that, Galato.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Baharu?
Okay. Yeah, quite honestly, I'm not very sure if we can do justice to this particular topic for many reasons, but let me just share my opinion. There is a lot of messed up stuff out there. Self-determination being the keyword that we are using, the environment, even if that happens, the environment for exercising that over your territory is constrained by multiple existing policy constraints. What are they? For example, land tenure policy in Ethiopia. For the last 30 years, under Mengistu, I kind of understand where we were. Those of us, a couple of us sitting in this room, were part of that movement that led to the nationalization of land in Ethiopia and hopefully did give some whatever to farmers. Over the last 30 years, that very policy is turned into meaning the national land belongs to the Tigrayan group, literally. I don't see anybody who would dispute that. I have seen it in Finland. I've heard it from people who work in that system, that a guy from Tigray just walks in with a piece of paper named Tagai, should be given a land. He goes to Walaga or Benishangul, Gumuz, or wherever, takes hectares and hectares of so-called government land, and then cashes out and leaves tomorrow morning to come back to Finfinne and build high-rising building. This is a guy, literally a pedestrian. He did not have a shoe, simple shoe. And so sorry, I'm not trying to be overly critical. Now, so what that leaves us with is, when you talk about self-determination, should it become in reality, what would be the key policy changes that regions like Oromia should consider? Now, I can understand if we extend that, if I extend that conversation on self-determination vis-a-vis what you have raised, Dr. Hambisa, about the status of different so-called chartered towns. First of all, I do kind of get why Finfinne can be considered as a chartered city. I have no slightest idea why Diradoa is in the first place. Assuming that the government of Oromia will have that real self-rule power and be able to decide, a city like Finfinne, you can, before I even get to the weeds about what happens in the city, there has to be a no change boundary status for Finfinne. Look at Washington. How often did the size of Washington change? Probably zero, to the best of my knowledge, from my little knowledge of American history. It is a federal capital, so also is Finfinne, and it will probably remain federal capital if we want to stick together and stay as a federal state. I don't have any problem with that. But you cannot continue to manipulate the boundary of the damn state according to the interest of whoever is ruling that country, particularly up to now when we are led by people who never wished us any good. So my take is, if I am a politician and decision maker, Oromia should have its legitimate benefit from having hosting the federal territory and in its boundary. The federal territory should serve both the international community and whoever is there for the best interest of our country, which is okay. I don't have any problem. But it is still a legal property of the government of Oromia, or Oromia. It's in Oromia and it belongs to Oromia. It has to have, Oromia has to benefit for simple reason, because it loses enormously by having that federal territory, hosting federal territory in Oromia. We take on the pollution, we take on the garbage that comes from there. So, I mean, we can go on and list what Oromia pays to keep the federal territory going and deserves rightfully a return benefit from federal territory. I don't understand, as I said, why Diredawa is. But anyway, so the first thing really is that we need to get the policies that exist today completely changed. The land tenure system, in my opinion, under transitional government should be number one agenda item for conversation out there. The time when land belonged to government, blah, blah, for that matter, at our own demand, that is, I'm talking about intellectuals' demand or students' demand, it was great. It did serve its purpose. It doesn't serve that purpose any longer. Under the current system, for the last 30 years, it was a disaster. It gave Oromo land to 6 million Ethiopians. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Asafa, if you may address this issue, and also why during the transition you believe or do not believe that Finfinne, Dredawa, and Wallo Oromo boundaries and administration should be tinkered with or not?
Even ready to speak the truth, we are really discussing this issue because the Habasha politicians created this situation for us. If we believe that Oromo is a nation that should determine its destiny, Wallo, Finfinne, or the so-called charter cities, Dredawa, Jimma, are part of Oromia. So it's part of the Oromo body. So Habashas intentionally try to divide, weaken the Oromo people. That's why they created that. The TPLF OPDO, the TPLF OPDO, or the Naftanyas, the current Naftanyas and the previous Naftanyas collaborated to divide and weaken Oromo, to make, in fact, all cities had the TPLF EPRDF government continued, all cities in Oromia, Nakamte, Asala, others would be chartered cities because their intention was to partition Oromia. Still, the new government, the new Netanyahu government, wanted to erase Oromia, that we didn't discuss. We are talking about the self-determination of Oromia, but the new Netanyahu government want to scrap Oromia from the map so that it can create colonial territories again, so that Oromo people cannot be united and act as one people. So this is part of the colonial project, colonial political machination. And this issue should not be addressed in isolation from the larger Oromo national cohesion. It should be included in that, and we Once the Oromo people determine their destiny, this is going to be resolved within that context.
I'm sorry. Dr. Truman, what's your take?
I agree with most of that's been said so far. I think it really has to be decided at the end of a long transition period, really, when hostility is reduced and we're more likely to find consensus. In terms of that's regarding Giridawa and Trintinet. In terms of self-determination in general, I note that a referendum has been promised by the OLF, but not by the Oromo Federalist Congress. Obviously, the Oromo Federalist Congress will campaign for a federalist solution. But we should remember two things. One, I don't think we are a federation at the moment. I think we're a confederation, because according to the Constitution, it says that sovereignty lies within the nations, nationalities, and peoples of Ethiopia. This is Article 8. All sovereign power resides in the nations, nationalities, and peoples of Ethiopia. Sovereignty does not lie with the executive of the federal government. So that makes us, by definition, a confederation, I believe, where we already have, as part of the 1994-5 Constitution, we already have sovereignty within the nations, nationalities, and people. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say regarding that. Oh, except referenda. Be careful with referenda. We had a referendum in the UK a few years ago regarding Brexit, and that has created more division on the topic than existed before the referendum. And I think the majority of people feel that the referendum result was the wrong one now. So don't don't put all your eggs in one basket of referendum is my advice.
Thank you, Dr. Truman. So we're done with this topic, and you have 1 minute each to converse with one another. We shall start with Professor Asfo. Professor Asfo, you unmute yourself, and then go ahead.
Once again, I have no rebuttal with any of my colleagues. So to save us time, all I can add is these word liaison, it is a substitute for occupation. So it self-exposes its intent. And many of these lands we know as 100% where Oromo lands, there is absolutely no reason to charter them. And the discussion has to be all the time. We never actually, many of us never gave up on that discussion, but escalating the situation right now has to be a political decision, is what I was saying. So there is no need to duplicate enemies and give each other additional homeworks. Let's try handle it one at a time. The biggest issue in front of us is Abiy and his regime. Once that is out, then the idea, the topic of self-determination will be obvious topic to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Duguma?
I don't have much to add. And as I keep on pleading ignorance, I think I would do that in this case again. But I think our political scientists and our historians should and politicians should take the lead on this, particularly the status issues, for many reasons. And I'm particularly, if ever, the federal state is going to remain as it is, based on full satisfaction of the demand of every nation and nationality, there has to be a federal capital. As I said earlier on, I don't understand why others are chartered cities. All of them happen to be in Oromia. It's a crazy idea to start with. As Professor Asafa said, it is done for keen intent than keeping the country whatever it is. So the federal capital territory, again, I did indicate my position earlier on. It can serve the purpose of federal territory, provided, and it has to be, this is not something negotiable, the boundary should be demarcated, hard boundary, and that will never change forever. Should the growth demands for any whatever, whoever wants to serve the federal capital territory and need extra space has to negotiate with Oromia and be able to get extra space in Oromia according to the the way the rules and regulations of the state dictates and accessing Oromia land for any purpose. As I said, I don't want to get into the woods. I just don't have the policy qualification, if you like, or the political qualification to say more on that topic beyond this. Thank you.
Professor Jallata?
Yeah, this is a very interesting issue, the issue of cities, which are called garrison cities. All cities, majority of cities in Oromia are garrison cities, where the Netanya settled and they created their networks by creating Oromo collaborators from rural areas, where they extended their tentacles in Oromo in order to extract the surplus, send their police, their agents to suppress people, take their land. So the garrisons, all of the cities almost are garrison cities, the city of the Natanyas. If you are aware, Oromos, the majority of the Oromos are rural people. In these cities, most of them are Natanya settlers. They despise the Oromo. They see them as the backward people. Who, even when you speak in Afan Oromo, they laugh at you at cities. Recently, they even killed people in Philippines because they spoke in Afan Oromo or they wore Oromo clothes. So the issue of the resources is a part of uh, Amara Habasha settler colonialism. And unless this settler colonialism and its institutions are dismantled, Oromos cannot even determine their destiny. Oromos should pay very serious attention. I did research and wrote an article on garrison cities in Oromia. If you read that article, you will be amazed. And there are other people also who wrote books on Philippines. You need to study. It's a very serious, complex issues where the Natanya settle in the heart of Oromia, where they produce and disseminate their propaganda, their racist rhetoric. If you the media outlets that are propagating against Oromo people are located in these garrison cities. So we have to seriously study while we are struggling for our self-determination. We need to understand these issues because these are not simple issues.
Thank you. Dr. Truman?
I've got nothing to add on this topic, thanks.
I just want
Thank
to
you.
compliment Dr. Professor Asafa. He is right on the mark in terms of how he characterized the so-called garrison cities. As it is in the heart of Oromia without Oromos.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Our next segment would be future looking. What is the way forward? let me recap about the three transactions that we have had before, and that had left some sort of scar on our minds. In 1974, because of the lack of any organized uh, political group, uh, we lost, or the revolution was hijacked by the military. In 1991, uh, uh, due to probably similar weaknesses, the unawareness of the general public, the lack of preparation or organizational capacity by the political groups, we again lost to the then TPLF. And 2018, after about 4 years of uh, un, um, uh, resistance of the Oromo Kero, uh, we again lost political power, and those people who were organized by the TPLF as a go-between, who had served them for 27 years, came to power. And probably, in my estimation, the last 3 years has been um, the worst of all the years of occupation we have experienced. So here again, we are at this point. What should be the way forward? What pitfalls should we avoid? What opportunities should we exploit? How should we come together, put our minds together, and probably this time make sure that this yoke of operation, which has been for a century and a half, is once for all broken. Professor Asfo, unmute yourself, please. You have approximately 2.5 minutes on each of you on this segment.
That is fine. In my suggestions, I assume Abiy is gone in order to streamline my suggestions, because he's on the way out. I believe that he's on his way out. Once, and even in order to contribute to that, I have 5 simple suggestions, maybe 4. Number 1, we have to be a bigger power. And this will help us to balance the coalitions we make, and it will bring respect to the Oromo struggle, to the camp. How do we be more of a power than where we are now? We have to support the Oromo Liberation Army in any way we can. And we have also to mobilize Oromia Special Forces, embedded Oromos in the military, to join the mainstream. This, I think, will empower, these 2 points will empower the Oromo struggle, make it a bigger power than it is today. The second one is, I think we have to have a collective firm stand on sovereignty of Oromia. In other words, no armed Oromo, non-Oromo shall enter Oromia. This is important also to gain respect for the Oromo struggle, for our people. The third one will be to tolerate and forgive each other. This one will give confidence to the Oromo struggle. There are small skirmishes here and there between medias, between media and political organizations, and maybe between 2 political organizations, etc. These need to go away now. There is a bigger fry to deal with, and it's very important that we, as Oromos, as Oromo, we say "Garabal Achu." The fourth one, I think, will be to synchronize the struggle, both regionally, politically, militarily, scholarly, civic society, etc. This has to have a foreseen visible network. By visible, I don't mean in public, but demonstrable, but they can be clandestine. That's the fourth suggestion. In other words, there has to be a political leadership. And this is extremely important because there is a great big risk of that country delving even into a greater genocide of bloodshed. Only if we have a synchronized struggle with a network, we can avoid or at least minimize the degree of genocide that is I see coming. The last one I have touched earlier is we have to have a constructed preparedness. Let's not leave things to chances, and let's not trust our intuitions. We shall trust, but take no serious risk. And if we do these five things, in my humble opinion, the day where the Oromo people will decide on their fate, they were governed, or their economy, or on their resources, will be very, very short. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Doguma?
Uh, I think whatever happens, in my opinion, negotiation may be unavoidable, and probably is even a better way of getting to that common destination. I think we as Oromos, based on what we have learned from our experience, three historical nodes in the past, the last one being the 1991, as one, was it Reagan who said that? In the process of negotiation, you may not get all what you want, but you can get what you deserve if you have the ability to negotiate from the point of strength. That brings me to the other side of what the Oromo should internalize, understand, and invest in. We need the power, we need to protect our interest. Let's not kid ourselves, let's not fool ourselves that there is no other way by which you can get or you can negotiate yourself out of slavery. You can force yourself out of slavery if you have the muscle to do it. So I think that should be the second most important agenda item that we as people need to understand. We don't have to go far to learn that. Those who have enslaved us for the last 150 years, the Naftanya, whether it's from Tigray or from Amhara region axis, how did they do it? What did they do? They had access to a much better sophisticated weapon than we did. So defense is the ultimate goal that we should be investing in, and we should look at it. On the negotiation front, as I said, we will be better off if we arrive at that common destination through negotiation. In that, we should not aspire to be as greedy as our colonizers. We have enough to not to worry about being losers. We can accommodate others, but hopefully on our terms, not by force. So let me just leave it there, even though there are a couple of thoughts that I would have loved to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Doguma. Professor Jallata?
What I would like to tell to our people is that in this world, people who have power are respected and get what they deserve. Power, you cannot achieve power without organizing yourself. When I say organization, I'm not talking about creating a small, petty organizations based on small identities or based on Ethiopian ideology. I'm talking about building national organizational capacity that can empower the Oromo people to survive as a people. So our movement is achieving clarity. Many Oromos who used to fake that they are struggling for the Oromo people, they have joined the Netanyahu camp. I'm very happy about that because we don't want to be confused by people who are promoting their personal interest and the Netanyahu interest that can sell Oromo for higher bidder. So the Oromo now we are getting organizational clarity, but didn't yet establish national organizational capacity. And we have started to build that. Ola has started that, and Ola and other Oromo Liberation Front, Oromo Federalist Congress, and other national Oromo civic institutions must create a united front that they can use against external and internal enemies. The internal enemies are people who become intermediaries who join the Netanyahu to satisfy their own interest. Believe me, there are Oromos who are ready for that. The Oromo people should stop them. And then, while building your unity, you have to negotiate with or ally with other peoples without exposing your secret, without endangering your national interest. So, by doing that, by building national organizational capacity, the Oromo people finally are going to regain their lost sovereignty, their lost power, their lost state, Oromia state that existed during the Gada Republic. So it's up to Oromo. If Oromos are mobilized, united, like 2018, by combining popular protest and armed struggle, the Oromo people are going to be victorious. That's what I would like to mention.
Thank you, Professor Jaleta. Dr. Truman, please unmute yourself and continue.
Thank you very much, Hamza. Only a few comments. Most has been said. There are a few things that possibly people might disregard that should be considered early on and not put on the back burner. We should immediately start looking after minorities and the disadvantaged in our region, in the Oromia region. We should avoid hate speech at all costs. We should challenge hate speech delivered against us by the Amhara and misinformation delivered against us. It's not beyond possibility that we could end up with a hugely nasty genocide between Oromo and Amhara. That is still a distinct possibility. And we have to, our biggest responsibility is to make sure that does not happen, obviously. And hence, tamping down on hate speech. We need to start thinking about the Truth and Rehabilitation Commission. This is the realm of experts, and we should involve those experts now or soon and get them in at the ground. And something that may not seem to be a priority at the moment is the environment and energy, the environment itself, and sustainability of agriculture in Ethiopia. These, I think, we have a huge chance to do the right thing as a nation now, as we are about to establish the foundations of it. So now is the time to think big and long term in terms of how we can be an example to the rest of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your generosity with your time and with your comments. So we have finally a 1 minute round where if you would like to address anything that has been not been said or reply to whatever has been said, I appreciate that. So I'll begin with Professor Bayena.
Thank you. I think instead of summarizing what my colleagues said, to which I overwhelmingly agree, I wanted to recap in one sentence the sentiment of what I have tried to convey. That is caution with optimism. My caution derives from the history of the country, um, and old and new, recent history, some 3 years old, and this has been mentioned, so I'm not going to recap that, but the history of that country, intrigues, the Machiavellian maneuvers make me think caution, and it is big on my mind, and I really think it should be big on every Oromo's mind. The second one is optimism, and I carry that because I am aware of some of the things that are going on the ground, maybe not necessarily benefiting from media coverage. So, and maybe intentionally, but caution and optimism, these are the two words I would like the audience to take away if he or she might have been bored with what I have been communicating most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bayene. Dr. Doguma?
I think I would agree with both the speakers. I think hate it never serves any good purpose. I think particularly those who hate us, I don't know what language we could possibly use to educate them on how to distinguish between really what constitutes fair and just system, speaking for that and on that, which is completely different from attacking individuals or personalities. In my opinion, you could be family member with any entity, any group, and we are, quite frankly, many people, particularly those who were born and brought up in cities, very few can claim 100% purity of Oromo blood in them. It's not about the blood. It's not about mixture. It's, as Professor Asaf repeatedly mentioned, it's about being part of an evil system, or you are against that evil system. And Oromos are being and are and will continue to fight the evil system. We don't fight individuals. We don't fight people. I just hope that those who are calling us names, who are appears to be committed to rebuilding Imperial Ethiopia or bringing back Imperial Ethiopia, understand that. And the hate rhetoric that they spew over the mass media would not serve any purpose. It certainly would not bring about what they're looking for. It can only alienate people who are sympathetic to our collective cause. So, yes, I agree. We need to, at least as elders, we need to inform, educate our people why hate or hate speech, if anybody among us does that, is not helpful, it's not useful, and it's not supposed to be. Let me just end it there.
Thank you, Dr. Doguma. Professor Jadleta?
I like the comment that Dr. Trevor made, but I have a question for Dr. Trevor. In very complex situation, where racist groups hate you, attack you, try to destroy you, how are you going to react to that? When they attack you armed, they're armed, they use words very inflammatory, racist rhetoric. And they even say that we are going to kick you out of the country, send you back to Madagascar or out of the country. So what are your advices for those people who say that? And what are your advices for Oromos how to react to do that?
Would you like me to respond to that directly now?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Basically, don't sink to their level. Don't play their game. If you obviously if people are attacking you with weapons, then you have to attack them with weapons, unless you're of the caliber of Mahatma Gandhi. But we don't have to sink to the level of the Amhara. We will act with dignity, composure, and I agree with Asfal. We've got to act with caution and optimism. I would add consideration to that, but above all, I would add confidence, not complacency, but confidence. The Oromo are poised. Ethiopia is at the feet of the Oromo now, and we are poised to do the right thing if we keep our head and don't react like children when they're taunted in the playground. We'll behave like grown-ups.
Thank you, Dr. Galeto. I really appreciate that. Um, Thank you, all of you, for taking your time and having such a wonderful conversation. Let me share with you just few points which I thought would be my take. Um, I agree with Professor Asfa about caution and optimism. I think it was Reagan who said trust but verify. So we need to trust but verify. In Amharic, they say, "Yaltaretere temenetere." So we need to do that. That's very important. What is our message to the Oromo people? To the Oromo people is uh, our freedom lies in our strengths. Without being strong, without being armed, without being able to defend ourselves, we cannot gain our freedom. So what do we need to do at this moment? I think we should all get behind the Oromo Liberation Army, who is a freedom fighters, and assist them. What do we have a message for the other oppressed nations and nationalities in Ethiopia? Our fates are intertwined. So we better get together, we get better organized, we better put our heads, our minds, collective minds together and try to forge a ground which would be a genuine, lead us to a genuine democratic arrangement in our respective nations to begin with. And then whatever kind of arrangement we would like to have together, then we can work together. The Oromo diaspora, my thinking is the Oromo diaspora needs to stop the infighting that we have had for so many times, for so many years. I know because of the failed transactions, the three failed transactions we have had over the last 50 years, we are all so much uh, mistrusting each other, but I think we should stop that mistrust and know that our young, educated, well experienced people are in the Oromo Liberation Army. We should get behind them. We should be willing to be led by them if need be. Uh, what is my message? Our message to the people who were in power for a long time and want to stay in that power and be oppressive. The Oromo and other oppressed nations have come to a point of no return. No nation in Ethiopia is going to accept the old system, the old unitary system with one language, one religion, one culture arrangement. That day is done. All that you might need in fighting will only lead to more bloodshed, more destruction of property, more mistrust, and more suffering for our collective people. So it is better for you to come to a point where you say, okay, that old system is not working. Let's forget about being in power, being a bully, and let's try to forge a common ground where we could coexist. Because one way or the other, we are going to remain neighbors. What is our message to the international community? My take is the Oromo and the other oppressed nations and nationalities in Ethiopia, which make more than 70% of the 120 million people, are at a point of no return. You cannot force them into the old existence that we have had for 150 years. The Oromo are the biggest in population-wise. We are in the center of the empire. We contribute to the empire's 60% of the economy is made from Oromia, and the people have come to a point of no return. Any arrangement that you might think of, any power brokering that you might think of that doesn't take the Oromo seriously and doesn't involve the Oromo at the center is going to fail. You should come to that understanding. So having said that, I thank you again, and it is time for us to end our conversation for today, and then we will take up in the green room in a few minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guddina badachuu dadhabde ayyoon Oromoota bittaa lafa jalaa harkoota guddina badachuu dadhabde ayyoon Oromoota. Cinaan dargaggoota dhaluun kee baay'ee cinaan dargaggoota ka jiru siif gahaa ka du'ee maa'oota bittaa lafa jalaa harkoota guddinaa baadhachuu dadhabde ayyoon Oromoota bittaa lafa jalaa harkoota guddinaa baadhachuu dadhabde ayyoon Oromoota. Kaaleen arrasiif guddate kan gaafasti kaaleen arrasiif guddate waan fete dhaammadhu dargaggoo nawwaate bittaa lafa jalaa harkoota guddina.